Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Generation 6 SMARL post-mortem. Today we're going to be talking about the cameras and other production technology behind the SMARL races. We are here at Crystal Valley for an exciting race against the 16 competitors of Season 1, and we're going to see how I can stand up against them. I did increase their speed a little bit, but first, let's get into the technology. Cameras for the Scrap Mechanic Auto Racing League was an interesting concept. I had a hard time trying to figure out what to do exactly because I started planning cameras before the survival update. Figuring out ways and angles to film small races was one of the most important parts of making my videos interesting. I still am working on them now, but it came a long way from when I first started. I first started using a small hovering drone I found on the workshop, and I just followed around the racers in my Generation 2 test exhibition race, and it worked. I mean, I got a view of all the action. However, I did run into walls sometimes, and it was only a single camera angle, so I didn't really have a lot of production value. During that year or so hiatus between Generation 2 and Generation 3 and 4, I started trying to figure out different solutions to having more camera angles. I noticed that there was a camera API somewhere hidden inside the code, but I couldn't figure out how to access it using just a general Lua. However, when my search continued, I found a way to teleport the Scrap Mechanic character. I was able to simulate camera changes by teleporting the character to different sections and platforms along the track. However, the problem with this was that it was inconsistent and caused some lag in some cases. I continued to deal with this problem until the survival update released the biggest change I ever asked for. You see, a long time ago, I actually sent a tweet to the Scrap Mechanic devs asking for access to the camera API. Of course, that tweet had no likes, views, or retweets at all, but I like to think that the Scrap Mechanic devs saw that tweet and decided to make that an accessible API. As soon as the Scrap Mechanic Survival Update dropped, there was a major addition of endpoints and functions into the Scrap Mechanic Lua code. Among these additions, there was an entire API for the Scrap Mechanic camera. I nearly immediately got to work playing around, doing experiments trying to see how this API works. I did eventually figure out a way to switch between cameras, how to move the camera smoothly, and attach the camera to certain blocks. After many iterations and attempts, this was the end result. This right here is the Scrap Mechanic camera, the current one for Generation 6. It's really simple. It's just two engines connected to a mod pack, WASD converter and controller, attached to an orientation block, and then this flat block right here is the camera node that I can switch to. Attached to every single one of these cars are a tracker. This tracker is given a number from the car ID, which is saved within the car's blueprint, and this allows for each tracker to have their individual and separate identifiers. Whenever I want to change which car the cameras are focusing on, all I had to do was press a button in the camera controller, which I will touch upon later, and that actually sent a signal to every single camera block that I created that sent a number input into the orientation block, which changed the ID of which the orientation block was tracking. And because it was tracking, all it made it do was face this block towards whichever car I wanted it to track. It was a pretty simple but rudimentary decision and design, so it worked for most of the times. Sometimes there would be things that would get in the way. The cameras would also have some glitches, and I could see right through the block sometimes as the camera wasn't updating fast enough. There was a couple things that I needed to fix. However, I decided to stay with it for now and update it later. In an attempt to add some more camera angles, I decided to create a drone. After a few iterations, this was the final result. A small, fun-looking drone with propellers that don't do anything. All I have inside of it is a block to control the drone's location, and then another block to control what the drone sees. This drone also acts similarly to these camera indexers right here. However, the code is internal. It receives input from the camera control center, telling which car you want the drone to follow, and then it uses propulsion or vector forces to move this block up and out, or up, left, right, or whatever direction it needs to go to stay around this car. There's a bunch of other math behind it, but I can get into that coding later on my other channel. So as you can see here, this camera is going to be following, I believe, White Rider, index of 1, as they are all indexed by their order of creation. So you can see how this one is actually going to go right by the second one. I should probably delete that one, but it's fine. And finally, I have what I'm probably the most proud of, is the camera control center. All I have to do is press E on this and it inputs me to the nearest camera, and that allows me to control everything I need to do for an entire small race. I attached many key bindings to these cameras in the control center, which allowed me to change which camera I was viewing, which car I was focusing on, and how high I wanted these drones to move. There was much more I could also control, but I can get on that later. Moving on, if we start moving these cars forward, all I had to do was press either W to change positions, A or D to change car indexes. If I hold down space and press W, I could switch to first place, same thing with second place, third place, fourth place, and etc. I could also move to other cameras by just clicking, and this was a cycle. It just moved all the way around the track, so I could choose whatever I wanted to do. And if I held down space and right clicked, I could stop the cars in their tracks. So while I wait for these cars to actually get into their formation, I will stop their cars right around now. And there they go. And so the rest was history. All I had to do was just follow the cars around, try to focus on the racers and the action. However, this was super hard because I was just one person and I only had one shot at getting the perfect angle. But I think I did okay. Considering what happened in season 1, I'm not ashamed of the camera work that I did. Another major production asset of SMARL was the overlays. The evolution of the overlay was quite impressive to me. I started off with, as you saw in that one video, just regular blocks. In an attempt to keep time and track of all the cars, I created something like this. You'll see probably an overlay of the actual YouTube video. Check that out if you want to see more about it. But all this massive laggy lap board did was keep track of the cars, the time, their fastest lap and their last lap, and then their overall positions and times when they finish. It was a pretty hard product, but it was really fun. And I'm actually happy with the end result. The only problem was that it was way too laggy to actually do an entire video with. So I went back to the drawing board. I decided I wasn't going to use the individual logic blocks that lagged the place out with the mod pack, and I decided to make my own block internally. I have not actually made a video on this because it failed pretty easily, but I basically used a bunch of printing statements that was inside of these individual pieces that basically kept track of different parts and locations of the Generation 3 and 4 cars. After that failed, I decided to go all internal. I realized I don't need a whole bunch of blocks to keep track of these cars and their colors. I can just make one block to rule them all. And that's when I decided to make the Race Control Center block. This block, all it did was receive inputs. It received the track IDs. This kept track of which ID of the map the cars are on so that the cars could use their proper checkpoints. It received the number of laps. So if you can change this, it basically made the cars go that certain amount of laps before finishing. And that was about it. It also had a reset button in case I wanted to reset qualifying times, but that was it. What the race control really did was send out print statements to the console. These print statements contain JSON objects, or just data, that told a separate script that I made in Python exactly how the cars were functioning and performing. All the math was calculated in Lua and then sent to Python, which was then filtered and parsed and sent to a web server, which contained overlays that held the data for the cars. These overlays displayed all the stuff that we needed to know. It had lap times, it had best lap, it had last lap, it had the timing splits, depending on how the checkpoints and where they passed. It even had the finishing time and the overall season, which I updated later. Running a web server and a Python script that read the scrap mechanic log at the same time as running 16 cars got a little bit laggy, so I got pretty creative. I was able to use my local network to connect to my laptop and run the Python scripts and the server on there. So all I had to do was just send the data from Scrap Mechanic to my laptop, which then updated the web server and overlay board, which connected back to OBS, and I could control the overlays from there. What you saw during season 1 and during the exhibition races was the first iteration of that. It worked out pretty well. There was a couple bugs here and there, and I'm still not sure how it happened, but I will be rewriting that entire script to be less memory intensive and have way more functionality for season 2 and generation 7. And I think that's about it. I know there's probably a whole bunch that I forgot to cover, so if you have any questions, please just leave them in the comments or ask me on Discord, and I will happily answer any outstanding questions that you have. Without further ado, let's get to this race. I increased the speed of these cars a little bit, and we're just going to go right into it. Starting off, we're getting past Penny King as they cross the finish line, and they are slightly faster, so he's going to pull up in front of me during this back straight. But that's okay. If we can hold this up, we can catch up to the leading pack. All right, the leading pack is very close together. Crystal Valley is a more technical section than Mystic Raceway. Ow, I get caught up in a kerfuffle with Legends Tire and Black Knight, and Black Knight spins out again and blocks me off. Impressive. Crystal Valley, which where we are at right now, has the stairway. Wow, those guys got spun out. This place has a lot more turns and corners, which slow these cars down a lot. As you can see here, I'm already up to nearly first place and second place behind Grasshopper and White Rider. But the hard part is holding them off on the longer straights going down the finish line. Crossing the line for the second lap, we are already in first place, but these cars caught up way too fast. Actually, very impressive. So White Rider is going to get around us going into lap 2, but I think we can hold them off for this technical section of the circuit. Maybe. Wow, he's staying up next to us through these turns, which is pretty impressive. Wow, there's a massive car behind us, and it looks beautiful. Actually, I had a lot of fun filming these cars, as I love racing, and being able to see something like this in Scrap Mechanic with so many cars working so smoothly and efficiency and not really crashing. Oh wow, I just crashed. I should probably look ahead of me. And these guys not really crashing as much as they used to, and being able to watch them just roll almost like actual race cars was just super fun to watch and super fun to make perform. Hopefully Generation 7 will have just as interesting races. They will be a little bit different, but I think it'll be for the best. White Rider is way pulling out ahead, but I think I can catch up to them going on to this final chicane on the backstretch. I think this is the C or the S. I'm not really sure what it was called. I think if I can get past him onto this next lap, we should be good to go. Moving up the inside, going out way too wide here. I remember, if you guys remember that race, there was an amazing finish. This was probably the closest finish of the entire Season 1 here at Crystal Valley. Crossing the line, I am still in second place. Sweet Haze is trying to catch up, and that's not good. We're going to have to do some major work if we really want to continue. All right, this will be a shorter race, hopefully, if I can hold them off for the rest of this lap, but who knows what will actually happen. White Rider is sticking close behind, and so is Sweet Haze. This is actually very impressive. Now, here they go, trying to zip past me, but they have to brake for this chicane right here and hold it. Actually, they did that pretty well. So I'm going to have to get out the way as they... Oh, shoot, I nearly hit the wall again. Let's go into first person and see what this looks like. I'm staying just barely ahead of those two, but it looks like the rest of the field is catching up. And there is a car stuck, actually. According to the log, there is a car stuck near turn 10. All right, going on to the front stretch, I have a pretty adequate lead. As long as White Rider doesn't catch up to us dramatically, we should be clear. But here he comes. Through the line, though, I do beat him. And I feel like this is kind of unfair. I got a head start, so we're going to actually see if we can catch up from the back. I feel like that's a little bit more fun than actually just being ahead of everybody for now. All right, we are now in the back, officially from the back. And Lemon Racer is the target to beat. Going through this line, the technical section, we should be able to pass a lot of cars as they are much slower through the turns than I am. However, they do have a lot of top-end speed. Moving through, we can cut the chicane, get past Lemon Racer, up to Chaos Shifter. Typhoon Blade is there. We're going to have to slow down, and oof, wow, we hit him pretty hard. But they actually make it, and so do we. He nudges me out a little bit, might be a little bit upset about that attempt to pass. It was a pretty shoddy pass, but it's all right. Grasshopper nearly gets spun out. Actually does get spun out by Black Knight and runs into me. Dang it, and that lets Typhoon Blade get past us, and Black Knight got spun out and hit that wall. All right, cutting the chicane, we get past Typhoon Blade nice and cleanly, and now we have our eyes focused on Neon Annihilator. Neon Annihilator is right behind Sniper's Dream, I believe that is, who actually had a pretty decent finish here at Crystal Valley, I think. No, actually, they had a really bad mistake and just spin out with Lemon Racer, I believe, at that race. And that was the first time they were so far down the line in the whole season. Wow. Everybody just zooms past me so quickly. Good thing I have this massive gap behind me and Typhoon Blade, or else I would be in huge trouble. Here is my second attempt to try to catch up with the pack here on the technical sections as they slow down massively for the turns to keep grip. There's Fiery Dragon, and there's Lamob Industries, and we get barely past Neon Annihilator temporarily and Sniper's Dream, but we will get past them completely during this turn, maybe, if I don't get launched out wide. I'm going to have to cut up the inside if I can stay right here on Neon, or Lamob Industries, excuse me. Lamab Industries, I believe that's actually pronounced. And there we go. Red Thunder now past. We're moving our way up the order, getting past Legends Tire and just completely throwing White Rider out of the way. That lets Legends Tire get right back past us, but we can go through them on the chicane. Now it's up to who's that? That's actually Sweet Haze. Sweet Haze up here in the lead now, got past White Rider. if we can catch them on this turn right here, we should be able to stay in front for the... Maybe not, actually. Let's see how fast they can go through the line. We now have about a 50-meter or so gap to us, and it's closing down quickly. Wow. Sweet Haze zooms past us at the finish line, and so does White Rider. They're coming up, but they're going to have to brake for this turn, and that's going to give me the opportunity to fight back at Sweet Haze. If I can win this lap, then I will call it a complete success, and I think I will. If I can get a far enough gap to Sweet Haze, then I should be able to successfully cross the line in front of them. But I don't think they're going to go down without a fight. So this will be pretty interesting. Alright, I just need to make sure I do these turns perfectly. Because I have no cars in the way, I am going to have a good line through this technical section going out of the stairway onto the, I guess you call this the roundabout, carousel, I don't know what you want to call it. Going through the chicane, we should be good. Alright, that was a really good run. We are now far enough away from Sweet Haze to successfully take the win, I think. Oh yeah, this is going to be no competition. Perfect. Alright, so Gen 6 race against all the racers on, I think this is Crystal Valley, was a success. I'll call that an absolute win. Gorgeous. Depending on how long this race was and how long this video is, I actually might just show you guys a sneak peek at Generation 7. And you know what? I'm going to do that. So I'm here loaded up on a test track world, if you want to call it, and this is the new Generation 7 tracks. Well, it'll be the same track style. There might be a little bit changes to the assets every once in a while, but so far this is what works the best with the default vanilla pieces. As you can see here, we have 4 cars running around. These cars were created by JJplays, an amazing, very talented young man who's approached me and asked me if he could put his creations onto SMARL and have those race around, and I thought, okay, I'll check them out. And I looked at them and they were absolutely amazing. So this right here is a scale replica of the Porsche 911. You can probably tell if you guys know anything about cars, and it looks really good. All purely built in vanilla, no modded parts, of course some glitch welding, but that is it. And I actually loved all of his car designs. He's made a bunch of different replicas, including the Mercedes AMG, Ford Mustang, the Audi R8, Corvette, which is my personal favorite, and all sorts of McLarens and all things like that. And the GT3 versions of some cars too, which has been really fun. The only problem with this is that they are complex. They are super complex creations, and as you can tell, when complex creations get close to each other, they do tend to cause lag and other just problems with scrap mechanic. And so I need to figure out a way to either simplify these or reduce the lag inside of them. I am working on saving up to buy a better computer, or at least buy better parts, not a better computer completely, but just to beef up my computer, but that'll take a while, and I still want to get some Generation 7 stuff out before that. One thing I have changed was, as you can see here, are their ride height. If I take the actual R8 right here, this is the original build by JJplays, so go follow him on the Steam Workshop. I don't think he has a YouTube or anything like that, but really talented creator. So what I've done here was just add a different sort of suspension, and which increases the ride height to allow it to go off of ramps. And I also just attached my own mod. So really, that's all it is. I just took this car, put my own suspension onto it, and then put these 2 blocks, which you will see right here, the steering wheel and the engine block, connected to each other, and connected it to where the steering wheel and the engine wheels would go, and that is it. And it's a fully converted, smart, auto-driving race car. Let's hop on board and see how these cars drive around this test track. Alright, let's get these cars moving. I do not have any sort of coding when it comes to collision avoidance or error correction, so many of these cars will probably mess up and go flying off track or hit each other or something like that at some point, so just excuse that. I just haven't coded that in yet. It's going to take a while. This has been taking a long time to research and get the code going. But as you can see here, the cars are pretty fast. This is the actually lowest engine speed, so I've actually color coded the engine, so if you paint the engine block to a different color, it will go faster and then faster depending on which version. As you can see here, the car is going to cause some lag as it just flipped over. So yes, basically error correction is not a thing yet. As you can see, these cars are flipping over the ramps and stuff like that, which isn't really a good look. However, I can figure out ways to prevent too many collisions and mess ups and flips and errors when it comes to ramps and whatnot. But to go back to what I was saying before, the engines are color coded, so you can, if you want a bigger challenge, you can just repaint the engine. But right now, these are at the slowest setting that they could be without being like too annoyingly slow. So they look fast because they are actually just as fast as the Scrap Mechanic survival engine, and at full power, of course. And as you can see here, that car went way wide, hitting the terrain bumps that for some reason are just completely littered throughout these terrain assets, which I really hate. So if you guys can figure out a way to smooth out these terrain bumps like that one I just hit right there, that would be great. But apparently my cars handle it way better than I can. Going over the jumps, oops, wow, just completely sent it off the wrong way. Yeah, so I'm going to try to keep up and catch up with these guys, but going over the jumps, wow, I do it again. So I'm going to make a goal to actually try to keep up with these guys. I'll stay behind, who's this? This Audi R8 right here, and try to catch up behind them and see how difficult it actually is, even at their slowest speeds. They can take the corners much faster. I've done extensive research on friction and grip of Scrap Mechanic, except I haven't worked on the understeer or oversteer corrections yet. So as you can see, he kind of like went way out there, but it's fine. If you guys want to make your own tracks, these are the default tile pieces, so anyone can download these and make their own special track and send to me so that I can use in races or for testing or whatever. There are going to be some restrictions, such as the walls have to be consistent. There can't be any gaps in the walls or the track, or else the script for generating and scanning the track will mess up. The walls have to be up to the Scrap Mechanic character height or a little bit lower than the Scrap Mechanic character height, and I think that's about it. I will release that later, so we are making some pretty good progress, however, with all that, and I'm excited to see where this goes. Let me know any improvements you want to see, or if you think we should stick with these slightly bigger but more detailed cars, or should we go back to simpler cars like this one, which will cause maybe less lag as more of them get onto the track. So yeah, so this is just a quick progress update. Thank you, JJplays, for your amazing models, and they work really well with the new steering and suspension, and they work pretty good even among the ramps. Like, you can see they are flipping a little bit as they hit random physics bumps, but so far they've been staying right side up for the most part. We'll hopefully release more videos and updates and release code on how these cars all work in the future. But until then, I hope you guys have a great morning, afternoon, night, or evening, and I will see you next time.